I would love. All right. We should be live. Is that where you're going to sit? Because you're like close to the side. Which way do you want to go?
Which
Where are
way?
you going to be like in the middle of the.
I,
There.
I am in the center according to my camera.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is
Just,
that good?
we got a split screen, just be
Oh, yeah,
careful.
I'll stay central. I'll stay here.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
good?
it's just like, just not a lot of this is all I'm
You
asking.
don't want me to do any of this
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
or
Yeah,
this.
later on I can full screen, we
Okay.
can do a lot of that. But hey everyone, I'm talking to Dr. Ian O'Neill, uh, just one of my friends.
Hi,
And
Fraser.
we're going to talk about space. We have no real agenda today. Um, none.
And no plan.
No, we have no plan, but
I don't
and
know what I'm
yeah,
doing.
but I know that we're. So I wanted to give this a chance for people to ask if they had a bunch of questions about space and astronomy. Ian and I would love to tackle them. You know something that's going to happen on April 10th, and now the public relations has been put out there. Um,
Yeah. Big day today, big announcement. There's something coming on April 10th.
Yeah, the European Southern Observatory has said that they're going to announce the findings from the Event Horizon Telescope.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's going to be a big day, and I'm gonna. What time is it? I have a problem converting European time with our time. I think it's probably like early hours of the morning for us
Yeah, I don't, let me see what they said.
because it might be worth getting up early for. That's my problem.
Is it
I'm not
real?
a morning person.
Yeah. Uh, 1500 European time
That must be like 6 or 7 o'clock, right,
in the
in the
morning.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Pacific time anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who are
Yeah.
you? What do you do?
Well, I am technically, well, I call myself a science communicator now, but I've had many iterations in my career. I'd say it's going from what blogger with you.
Hmm.
That was a long time ago, Fraser. We're
I know.
talking like 10, 12 years. I started with Universe Today, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, or actually 11 years because it was 2008, I think, was my first Universe Today article.
I'm trying to remember like what was the American Astronomical Society meeting that we went to, and it was the one in
That was
L.A.
that was Long Beach, yeah. So that
Yeah,
was 2009, I think it was.
2009. Yeah,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
just before I started with Discovery News. So yeah, I started with you around about 2007 when I
yeah,
was fresh, toing and fromming between the UK and US, and yeah, and then of course we had a good couple of years with University, and then I started working for Discovery News, and that went on for another 8 years until they canned the entire newsroom all at once. No bitter feelings here,
no,
but then of course I launched into this wonderful freelance career of writing again. Now I just do technical writing. I do some writing for howstuffworks.com. I've got a regular space column, I want to say there. Also, I write for my own website, astroengine.com, a little bit less frequently. But I've been doing some projects all around the world. It's just so nice now to be freelance and actually speak to all these new people around the world who are interested in science. And I've been doing a lot of work in Canada as well, between University of Waterloo and the Perimeter Institute and Vancouver with Triumph, basically the little CERN in your neighborhood.
yep,
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years actually since leaving Discovery.
yeah. Um, so, and I wanted to. Ian was like, "What are we going to talk about?" And honestly, it is dealer's choice. We will let if you've got some questions that you want to bring up with us. I know a lot of the times I kind of completely hog the conversation. I'm too busy interviewing the person that I'm talking to. But this is a nice. We got an hour.
Yeah.
Ian's got one of the deepest knowledges of what's going on in space and astronomy. Although, do you find more recently um, you're starting to lose some of that really up to date knowledge because you're not trolling through it as quickly as you used to?
Yeah, because especially when I was with Discovery, that was a daily
Yeah.
grind. I mean, it was wonderful because I got to immerse myself in science and specifically space science. And every single day we were putting out news items. We were on the news feeds. We had interviews with scientists. We were on all the NASA news, all the European Space Agency news, everything that was going on. I just think back to those days, and they were wonderful days, but they were exhausting days. So now I'm kind of a little bit less connected, but then again, it gives me some time to work on bigger projects because now I'm not like stifled by the day to day, I can actually start thinking about doing PR releases and stuff. So, like with the University of Waterloo, for instance, they've got a scientist who's working with the Event Horizon Telescope, and they wanted to have some press releases, and they wanted to have an astrophysicist because, of course, my background is solar physics, not too far away from black hole physics. I don't think, it's just an iterative step on the stellar evolution line, and they wanted an astrophysicist to write these PR releases. So I wrote a really cool release for them couple of months ago. If you remember, there was a observation by the gravity instrument by the European Southern Observatory's VLT. They detected a flare around our supermassive black hole in the center of our galaxy, and it just so happened that the University of Waterloo, they worked on a lot of the theoretical stuff that went behind that, like a decade ago. I mean, there's a whole bunch of scientists on it, but it's just that they reached out to me and said, "Look, can you make it sound really cool?" And I said, "Yeah, I can certainly." Black hole physics is very cool. So it's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And so I've been asked back this time to write for their release of the Event Horizon Telescope, big announcement on April 10th. So yeah, it's kind of exciting times in space. I mean, we're at this crossroads of incredible science advances. Like we've got gravitational waves, the discovery of the Higgs boson. I mean, all these things I never thought I'd ever report on. And now we've got something to do with the black hole, in the center of the galaxy, somewhere, not necessarily here.
Yeah, we've got to be really careful because you have knowledge, because you worked on a press release, you have knowledge that you're not allowed to talk to until 1500 Central European Standard Time on April 10th, 2019.
Yeah.
And I actually knew that it was going to be April 10th, 2019. I've known that for about a week or so, because that was the rumor running through the astro community, but I didn't actually know. So everybody who's been asking me, literally, I get this question on almost a daily basis. Now we know. So now I can see some questions that are relating to this. So you can. You're gonna have to dance around it very carefully, but I think you can. I think you can pull this off.
I think now, I think this is the big difference because, of course, we're in news media, or I'm kind of like between news media and press releases, which is a kind of weird world to be in.
Yeah.
Because of course, the media gets advanced notice of like big releases under an embargo, a media embargo. And so I used to be able to speak to you about an embargo thing. So it was like the secret club where we could have this, discussion about this, top secret thing that's going to release in the near future to the public. But now, of course, with PR stuff, it's like the only people I can communicate with are the people who are actually hiring me to do that job. So it's kind of like, I want to talk about it. it's a nightmare, but it's fun though. It's nice. It's a different kind of structure as well, because it's not like reporting. So I'm not a journalist. I'm not a trained journalist, but I've done a lot of science journalism over the years, and it's not like that. You basically got to big up the contributions of that institution, and in the back of my mind, I've got the journalistic kind of like balance thing in my head. I have to turn it off. I don't need to get a second opinion. I don't need to speak to two other people about this research, because ultimately it's the institution that is releasing this embargoed news. And of course, I know about it pre-embargo. And there's loads of other institutions around the world who are also involved doing their own little thing. And so it's all going to come together in the end to a wonderful party on April 10th. So it's going to be an interesting week next week.
Yeah, but just stop asking me now. Now you have your date, April 10th, and that's actually not bad when you think like they kept saying spring 2019, and spring 2019 started on the 23rd of March. So that's within. I even mentioned that once they hit spring, the countdown was on.
Right, and it's funny because because I'm also an editor for the Astronomical Society of the Pacific's Mercury magazine. They're based in San Francisco, so I do like their quarterly member magazine. And it was exactly this time last year. I think it was the spring edition, 2018, where we thought they were going to release something, and there were rumors flying around that they were going to release something. And I was in contact with all my contacts saying, when's it going to happen? They said, well, we can't actually tell you, and they are being very cloak and dagger. I mean, I'm surprised there hasn't been a release or anything, because like if you remember the Higgs boson discovery, that was so leaky running up to the event. It was like, there was occasional scientists would like say something inappropriate on Twitter, and we'd all jump on it and then report on that as news. And gravitational wave discovery a little bit as well, but this one has been very tight
Yeah.
knit. And
The
considering it's a global collaboration, I'm kind of
Yeah, I mean, I
surprised.
think, the Killanova one
Yeah.
actually caught me by surprise. So
Mhm.
on the day that it was announced, even though there was like more astronomers working in collaboration on that project than almost any scientific project in human history,
Right.
and yet but I mean, I purposefully ignore all embargoes. So anytime someone tries to tell me something embargoed, I tell me after it's been announced to the public.
Hey,
So
that's kind of a cool policy to have because I've gotten kind of lazy because, with Discovery, we always had to release on the day that the embargo gets released. So we kind of got in the habit of reporting well ahead of time. Again, all our ducks in a row. I mean, this is the whole reason why they have embargoes is
yeah,
because you want everybody to have a fair chance to get prepared, get all their interviews in, get their articles ready, especially with historic announcements.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's a cool thing. I mean, there's a debate that perhaps we don't need embargoes, but then again, I think it serves a purpose, and that's kind of cool that you decide not to
Well,
actually.
the reason I did it was because embargo was being used as a hammer to
Right?
control who was a journalist and who wasn't.
Yeah.
So Emily Lakdawalla from the Planetary Society said that she couldn't get access to an embargoed paper because
Mm.
she wasn't a real because they had said she wasn't a real journalist.
Right.
And to say that Emily Lakdawalla isn't a real journalist is
Of all people,
ridiculous, right?
this
She's
is so
like
bad. And
one of the best journalists out there.
yeah.
So, and I heard, and then that sort of set up a conversation with a bunch of people talking about this, and I'm like, and I just said, like, that's it, I'm out. Like,
Mm.
even though I have journalist credentials for a lot of this stuff, I'm not gonna play a part of this game. So I wasn't gonna break embargoes, but I'm not going to listen until it's publicly available. And that
Yeah.
way, it would put me on an equal footing with all the rest, my team on an equal footing with everybody else who would get the news afterwards. And that was, drove a few of my team a little crazy because they knew there was big news stories going on that
Yeah.
I said you're not allowed to spend a second thinking about it until after the news is out. But I
Right.
think that it made us a better team overall, and it made and I hope that it was able to push back and sort of widen that. And I don't think embargoed stories are used to control people. Like bloggers are seen as legit journalists now when they
Oh, of
weren't
course.
when I took that stand, I don't know, like 8 years ago or something.
Yeah, because I remember when I mean that's why I love the style of university, and that's why I love writing for your for your publication because it was always very much on not on the seat of your pants, but it was like we were able to react very quickly to news. And so like when we went to the AAS conference in 2009, I think I remember we were going around all the poster sessions. We were running around all the meetings. We were trying to work out very quickly which stories would fly really well, with
Yeah.
what would really resonate with our university readers. And I remember that being such a freeing experience. And I remember vividly when you were able to corner a scientist who had just made an announcement saying a brown dwarf is most likely this color, and you managed to get the hexadecimal color, and
Yeah.
that became the story.
Yeah.
And literally you turned it around in like 30 minutes, and it was online straight away. And it
Yeah.
was like, holy cow, that's quick, and it's really exhilarating because
Yeah.
especially when you're on the ground at these events, and it's a very good um, talent to have because I learned all my best writing, of course, from you, Fraser.
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
So of course I took that into Discovery News, and I would make a point of not if I couldn't make it to the conferences, I would just have a look at all the press releases, and often it was the lesser known
Yeah.
items that were most interesting. And they were often the ones from small institutions who didn't have the big press releases. They weren't Harvard. They weren't all the big ones that you do the whole, books full of all the information you could ever want about end research. Often they were a postdoctorate or even PhD student who were doing incredible stuff, but they didn't get a look in because they weren't with a big institution. But that didn't
Yeah.
make their science any smaller than these big institutions. But I felt it was kind of our opportunity to give those scientists a voice, and that's where blogging really comes in.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, you've got these two things coming together, right? You've got people who are sort of raised on the same science fiction future that we were, who
Hmm.
have now followed that through to their career. I mean, you're an astrophysicist, but they, they were raised on Star Trek, went to university, want to find life around other planets. They want to send humans to Mars. They've got all these really ambitious ideas that haven't been sort of beaten out of them yet.
Right.
And yet they don't have necessarily the tenure, and they don't have the credentials, so that the public relations person at their university is going to be able to take the time to go and figure out what it is that they've done and translate it and write a press release. And it's a very complicated process. And so you
Yeah.
get all of these really interesting ideas and really interesting stories that nobody ever covers. Everybody is grinding through the same stuff
Yeah.
every day. And if you go, even today, if you go and look at the the news that has broken today, you're going to see, say, maybe 5 or 6 major stories. They all have a source that comes from NASA or the European Space Agency or whatever, and everyone is rewriting press releases, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
it's important to go after the stories that you can get the scoop on. And actually, like, a lot of the stuff, like, I hope that people, when they see my YouTube videos, they're seeing me do that, right? Is that I'm going after missions that they probably not heard of. I'm going after ideas that they haven't heard much about, or I'm telling them missions that are, 10 years, 15 years in advance, that are still just in the planning stages, but will sort of tickle your imagination. And I think that's where I'm most excited and interested in following my curiosity. So
Yeah, exactly. And when you're an editor or a publisher, you have to be aware of that as well to give a good breadth of coverage of all things that are interesting. I mean, ultimately, you know, the, if people don't read our stuff, we're not going to survive as an outfit. So that was one thing I learned very quickly, especially with Universe Today, was we want to generate interest and traffic and buzz around these topics, and often it's not even lesser known stories. It's having your own voice, and I think some of the best science communicators in our business, especially in space science, because space science is astronomy is a like gateway to a whole world of incredible things, and it's a very easy thing to digest. Apart from black hole science and stuff, it's kind of a
yeah,
little bit more crazy when you get into the weeds of astrophysics. But generally, it's a very accessible science, and it's very inspirational. And to find that your own voice and how you communicate that is very important. So even if you are all reporting on the same story, find a different hook or find a different perspective and have your own wit and your own opinion, especially if you're writing blogs. I mean, why not? Why are people coming to your blog over CNN or the Washington Post or whatever? Well, they're coming to you because they want your personality. So there's a lot of competition out there, so you need to stand out, and that's one of the big take homes I've realized with science communication in general. If you don't have a style, if you don't have that voice, and if you're just copying press releases and you're just regurgitating what other people are saying, you're not going to really make it, and you're not going to add value to that story. And I think it's our mission as humans
yeah,
is to express this incredible story about human exploration in our universe, because all the politics and all the bullcrap to one side, we are doing incredible things, and we're at the most incredible phase in science, especially with space science. I mean, we got like satellites orbiting asteroids, where we're looking into a black hole somewhere in some galaxy. We're looking at we just had the first direct imaging of a was it a super Earth or something? It was an exoplanet with a very turbulent atmosphere
oh
by
yeah,
the
yeah.
gravity experiment in the ESO. And I was like, wow, this stuff is incredible. We need to communicate this with the world. So yeah, I just think you need to find your own voice. You need to find the lesser known stories. You need to find your own hooks. So yeah, that's the only part. If I was giving advice about becoming a
No.
science communicator, I'd probably give those three things.
Arjun asks, as an astrophysicist,
One of them.
what made you interested in journalism versus straight research? So why are you a journalist and not a scientist?
Um, I fell into it. It wasn't my goal. To be full disclosure here, I actually failed English in school, so really
Oh,
writing
that's
wasn't going to be
ironic.
my strong point. I was also very bad at math as well, so really I chose two real bad topics to follow up. But I fell into science writing in particular because I met my wife in Hawaii. My research group was based, half of it was based in Wales, very wet, rainy Wales. The other half was based in Hawaii, in Honolulu. So you couldn't get two different research groups. And it just happens in my final couple of months of finishing off my PhD, I had the opportunity to work in Hawaii for a week. And that's when I met my wife. She doesn't have anything to do with space or anything. She's actually a real estate agent. So there's no way we would have met in normal life. And she actually comes from Los Angeles. And so basically, I was a poor student back then. So I had to try and afford, or did my
Yeah, your camera
camera
turned
die?
off.
Oh, that's peculiar. Let's try that.
Back.
It didn't like what I had to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my wife was like, no, you turned it
You're
off.
embargoed.
Yeah, you're done. You've spoken too much. So yeah, I met my wife in Hawaii, and I decided that after my PhD, I was very footloose. So it was like, hey, a life in America. Let's see how this goes. But of course, to fly backwards and forwards when I was working on my visa was very expensive, and so out of necessity, I had to find work that I could do from home or wherever I was in the world. I could do it remotely, and it somehow lent on my experiences as an astrophysicist. And by that point, I'd written a thesis, so I wasn't completely illiterate. But I had to develop my skill as a blogger, and you helped with me big time with that, because immediately I reached out to you. I think it must have been 2007, early 2007. Because I was trying to look for work, and I think I reached out to you because I always read the University Today, and you said, "Hey, actually, we're taking on writers. So, would you like a gig?" And you kind of taught me how to blog, and I was writing so much, so many blogs, and it was just really trial by fire because I had to earn money to afford my flights, but I didn't have any writing experience as such, and it was out of necessity that I had to start writing, and then I started loving it. And I tried to find research work out here in California, the sunny state. I thought there would be an infinite amount of funding for a solar physicist, but of course there wasn't. So I couldn't find a research position. There were a few opportunities, but nothing really came to fruition. And I was like, well, okay, I'm getting pretty good at this writing thing. Let's persevere with this. And then a couple of years later, I got picked up by Discovery News, and I was their space producer for 8 years.
Yeah.
So so it was an interesting road, and I would say that a lot of science communicators have got a similar kind of story. Like, they didn't intend, they didn't go to school saying I want to be a science communicator. They just kind of fell into this position, this role as a communicator, and perhaps they found it through blogging or doing journalism or whatever. So yeah, it was an interesting journey.
I'm seeing sort of a similar theme though with some other people, like where I think before there was the modern age of science journalism the way we have it today, and sort of all the different outlets and venues that you can do, people were kind of stuck into a research path. And for whatever reason, if research isn't for you, if you don't have the brain for it, or if you don't like the social structure and the way the academic situation functions, and you don't want to just spend all your time begging for money to get research grants, then you didn't have a lot of options, and now I think you do. So I'm starting to see people who are going to university. They're getting the underlying sort of credibility from the research side, but then they're going into journalism. They're doing that faster, and so they're planning this, and so they're getting to be a perfectly credentialed person who really knows their science, but now they're going and becoming journalists. And I don't hold a candle to that. My degree is in computer science, so if we're going to really come down to an astrophysics battle, I'll lose every time. So I think it's a pretty I'm really glad, I'm really grateful that, even if you're a PhD grad student, normally they don't have a lot of options for making money on the side, but now there actually are a lot of writing gigs that you can get and learn to be a science communicator that'll make your research work and grant money work better at the same time.
Yeah.
Arjun also asks, have you ever thought about writing a book? What would it be about?
Funny. Yes. Yeah. I'm actually in the process of writing a science communication book, of all things, like a handbook, because one of my collaborators, because I was asked to write the 5-year plan for Triumph, and Triumph is Canada's particle acceleration center. So they've got this really big cyclotron, Fraser, your lights probably dim down every time they turn it on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's right next door to you. So yeah, oh, it's gone again.
You did
There
it
we go.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's peculiar. Um, and I was asked to write I was asked to write a portion of their 5 year plan because in Canada there's like 5 year cycles of funding to put towards the government and private funding, and in the last few years, they've had scientists write the 5 year plan, which is no big problem. But unfortunately, the 5 year plan then kind of reads like a journal, and they didn't want that this time. So they asked two science communicators, two science writers to come on board with their Triumph team, and I wrote their implementation plan. So it was about a 100-page book.
Oh.
And it was a real eye opener as to how this could work for my career. So I was like, okay, well, technical writing isn't necessary because it kind of reminded me a lot of when I wrote my thesis. But then again, I kind of approached the technical writing from my experience as a science writer now, as a science communicator, and it kind of inspired me to perhaps do more. And Lisa, the strategic communicator who was at Triumph, she's now left and moved on. She's got a freelance career as well. She asked me if I wanted to co-write a book because she kind of wants to go. She wants to come from her like industrial background because she's a professional communicator, strategic communicator. I don't know what the correct term is, but she's actually trained in that area. And she wanted to work with me because I come from like a science background and kind of gone into science communication. So we're coming at it from two different ways. And so we're going to co-write a book. It's going to be a science handbook, science communications handbook, and it's going to be a useful book. I haven't read many other science books that I actually want to pick up and read, like science communication books I want to actually divulge. And it was like, well, I wanted to also come at it from like a space background because a lot of science communication books don't do that. They don't come from like a world of experience.
Yeah.
So we're going to see where it goes. I mean,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so, and I do want to get in the field of writing a book and also science fiction. That's where all our passions came from. Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Beautiful book.
Yeah.
Love that book. I've got it on my shelf.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm getting jealous of you guys all writing these books.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I really should get around to doing it. Is really the short answer to my long one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea though, right? Like a book about the history of science communication and how it's being done in the modern age.
Yeah.
So kind of like, but also ways for people who may want to choose that as a career, but also just sort of like what role science communication has played in the like the just in the way that we ingest science and science fiction, and the way that I think it's a great idea. I would love to read that.
We'll give it a go, and and it's kind of nice to work on a project with somebody else because doing your first book is very daunting, and I don't really know how to do it. And we both haven't written a book, so we're kind of buddies on this. So we're gonna see where it takes us, and it could be good. I basically wrote a book last year for the 5 year plan, so it's like I can do the words. It's just planning it and putting it together, and I don't know what kind of challenges lie ahead, but I'm excited.
Well, since you're not going to tell us what the Event Horizon Telescope is shown a picture of, I'm not going to tell you what writing a book is like.
Okay.
Deal. So, Curious Borg asks, why is there a dog in a bowler hat with a mug sitting behind you?
Oh, that's do you remember the famous cartoon, especially around 2016, around the elections, where I think it's a commentary on global warming? It's what's his name? I forget his name, but he did a Kickstarter, and one of the cartoons he wanted to turn into a stuffed toy, and it's basically a dog in a bowler hat sitting in his front room with a cup of tea, and his house is burning around him. And he said, "This is fine.
This is fine." Yeah, it's the "this is fine" dog.
It's a commentary about global warming. It's a commentary about our political situation right now. All this stuff's going on around us, and there's people that are just very ambivalent about it. So it's that kind of thing. And so he's there with his mug. He's also got his sticker, "I just voted" from the last election. So it's a commentary on a commentary.
That's awesome. And did you join the Kickstarter?
I did, yeah, yeah. So I got the first run on that little dog. Yeah, it's cute. I forget the name of the writer. C.K. Green, is it? C.K. Green or Casey Green, I think it is. So if you go onto Twitter, type in Casey Green, and you'll be able to find his Twitter handle there. And he does some interesting little comics, but that one really went viral. So I thought I'd need that because 2016 was kind of a bizarre year in both my homes,
Yeah.
in the UK and in the US. So yeah,
Yeah, well, and now the UK is who knows what the UK is going to
they don't know what they're doing as much as we don't know what they're doing.
no.
I don't know what's going on. It's very peculiar.
See, my thought is if if the UK exits, then it's just going to be a mess. Like it's just going to be like, and if it's a hard Brexit, it's just going to be like really tough. And I
Yeah,
think
it's
I think a
scary.
lot of people are unprepared for the consequence. Just from a space side, I know that for example, there's the various European contracts for various space missions are coming up, and now they're not allowing UK contractors to bid on some of these projects until a more specific exit has been figured out.
Right, yeah, because my sister, she's a microbiologist. She's like one of the world leaders in chlamydia research, of all
Nice.
things. So we kind of went in different directions with our careers, but she's still in research. She's a postgraduate fellow down in Southampton University, and she maintains the chlamydia biobank. So I'll give her a shout out. So basically, they have loads of different strains of chlamydia to be experimented on. So that's kind of fun. It sounds kind of icky for a space physicist. I don't know, yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but she really loves it. But she was saying she actually went home yesterday, and she was saying the research community, they're in a state of flux because a good portion of research funds come from Europe. And if I think when I was finishing my masters, actually, I was in Aberystwyth University, which is on the west coast of Wales, and I had the opportunity to go to Svalbard, which is in the high Arctic, and I was researching at the time the aurora. So the interaction between the Earth and the Sun. And it was an incredible experience. I spent 5 months up there researching with fellow Brits and students from all over the world. And that was entirely funded by the EU. I wouldn't have been able to go if it wasn't for that. And so now I know that the next generation of scientists, especially space scientists and researchers who want to go into the sciences, they're not going to have that kind of opportunity anymore. And it's not just Svalbard. I mean, that's an extreme case. I mean, it's just like traveling throughout Europe, having opportunities to go to the International Space University. Those kind of things now are kind of blocked. And I don't, if it's a hard Brexit, I don't even want to, I can't even begin to guess what kind of
Yeah.
hassle that's going to bring
I'm
to research in the UK.
yeah, there are I mean, so much of science is done by these gigantic consortiums now, and
Right?
so a lot of funding for things like the European Southern Observatory and various telescopes and CERN and things like that. There
Yeah.
are instruments that are paid for by different countries, and then they're all bolted together. A lot of the times, you'll see there'll be a mission from NASA or the European Space Agency that'll include a lander from Britain and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's just, and now all of this is up in the air. So I would think, I'm not sure if I mean, you talked about your sister and her compelling, icky research, but other friends there sort of are just like wincing as this
Yeah.
Brexit approaches.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, and this was another thing we were kind of chatting about, and everybody was like looking at the current administration in the States being kind of anti-science, but that is a kind of temporary. I mean, it's horrible what the US is kind of facing with the administration. Not to get too political, but that is a 4-year decision. Leaving the EU is potentially forever. I mean,
Hmm.
that's not up for re-election. That's not up for being overthrown. If we leave the EU is going to make an example of us, and why shouldn't they? I mean, it's the most successful post-war peace organization ever, and for the UK to drop out of it, the reasons behind it were ridiculous. The whole referendum was ill thought out. There was no real problem. We were all intents and purposes, we were a strong nation. We've got our problems, absolutely, but now we got some very big problems because we don't know what those problems are going to be. So I had some very interesting chats when I was back in the UK in August, and there was this very, I mean, we're kind of caught in this period of austerity anyway, so there's very little public spending. And so I noticed like my neighborhood, I hadn't been back to the UK for 2 years, and I've noticed that like the streets were falling apart. There were like walls falling down. It felt like it didn't feel war torn. Obviously, it's not nearly that bad, but there was definitely a feeling of some sort of erosion to society, and there was this general feeling of sadness when you spoke to people, even people who were voting for Brexit for whatever reason. They're not positive about the future. It's going to be a very, very long period of hardship if the worst case scenario happens. And that's not even taking into account the things that we don't know what's going to happen politically in the UK. So, yeah, I mean, just based on science funding itself, that's disastrous. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like for the economy. And I'm not even an economist. So it's scary times. I mean, I can't escape back to the UK and expect better politics over there. I'm going to stay in California. That's about all I'm going to get, but I'm okay with that.
Well, you can always come to Canada. You can get a gig with Triumph or the Perimeter Institute. Come on up to Canada.
Yeah, my wife's got family in Canada, so
perfect.
Why not? I really should make the move.
Yeah, if you do make it, come up and visit my island. I think you'll like it here.
I'd love to.
So hit us with some more questions. I got a bunch more great questions from Arjun, but I would like to give some other. But they're great questions. But I would like to give some other people a chance as well. Because there was, I like this. There's a bunch about fairly detailed information about quantum physics that you probably don't want to tackle.
Ooh, well, yeah, well.
Depends on whether you just sat down and worked on a press release with the Perimeter Institute or not.
No, I haven't recently. I do like quantum physics, though. I mean, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. There was a question here about... Yeah, I can see people are already starting to get into... Okay, so Arjun asks, with so many ways to get into space today, what would you like to see as a space experiment? Would you like to see a large project or CubeSat type things? So here you go. You get to run a space mission. What would you like?
Well, I've always got a soft spot for Mars, but Mars gets a lot of attention. I'd love to see. I'm all about manned exploration human exploration of the solar system. I would love to see some real international efforts being put into, possibly landing an outpost on Mars. But that is like everybody's dream. But I would say the one thing that I would dream about seeing in my lifetime is seeing a submersible going into Europa's ocean, because I want to know what's down there. So, and there's all indications to suggest that all the ingredients for life are there as we know it. So I think we need to go there. And Enceladus as well, around Saturn, I mean, that's an appealing target as well because it's got less of a gravitational field. So I would like to send more missions to the outer solar system because I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, even the ice giants like Uranus and Neptune, I would love to know more about those planets. I mean, it's really exciting with the New Horizons mission, went to the Kuiper Belt. We've been seeing some amazing things. I mean, the big surprise for me was Pluto. I would love to see more missions out there because I think there's a hell of a lot more surprises. And it's basically an open book of evolution of our solar system.
So just to be clear, you would like to explore everything.
Everything, robots everywhere. So I think I half joked about it on Twitter a few weeks ago. I said, look, I've come to the point now where I just believe that we need to invest way more money in science. And the way NASA operates, they operate on a tiny budget compared to the federal budget. Same in Europe as well. I mean, Europe is funded very differently. But just the technologies and the science that space science brings humanity is very, very hard to explain, because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for space science and our ability to explore, not just our fascination with exploring, but our ability to build these machines, to send these robots to some of the most extreme places in our solar system. before any human sets foot or explores themselves. So yeah, space robots everywhere around every single planet, absolutely, including Pluto, of course. And I would just love to see, in my lifetime, I want to see humans on Mars, um, because that's kind of dear to my heart in some ways. But also, I want to see a submersible in the ocean of Europa or Enceladus, if that's whichever one's a better target. But yeah, that would be my dream team of missions.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I would go like if I had to like budget was no issue, I
Yeah,
would probably go with the Europa
yeah,
submarine. But I mean, it is such a complicated mission that you've got to land on the surface of Europa, be in the horrible radiation environment around Jupiter. You've got to be able to have a probe that can melt its way down through potentially dozens of kilometers of ice, reeling behind a cable, and then it's got to find the top of the actual liquid ocean and then deploy some kind of submersible that moves around inside the water searching for taking samples and then returning to
yeah,
deliver its scientific data. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. Um,
yeah. I mean, alternatively, we can just cut to the chase and just send humans there, like in Europa Report. You
sure.
seen that? You seen
Yeah.
that movie?
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's Europa squid in there, so
Yeah.
I think we need to send a manned mission to actually verify that. So, uh, it,
Well, we always see it's the European space whales.
Europe and space
Yeah,
whales,
they're not
that's
like
quite
those evil squids.
complex.
They're harmless, gentle beasts that, sing their mournful songs beneath kilometers of ice.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of an Ian M. Banks novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sounds good.
Um,
I'll dream that as well, Fraser.
but if we want like more feasible, I'd like to see the Titan submersible,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because then it's
Titan.
just
I
right to
always
the
forget about
surface.
Titan. Yeah, that's
Titan,
probably easier to land on as well. So
exactly, right? Easy to land on. You just drop it into the ammonia ocean. That's having a uh, liquid that is an industrial solvent as your liquid to swim around in could be a little complicated. But apart from that,
yeah, yeah, I think yeah, Titan would be good. I like going back to places where we've explored before. That's why
yeah,
I'm so excited about Mars all the time, because you know
yeah,
what, we're going to get another Curiosity rover there next year. So I'm excited about that
with a
mission as well.
helicopter.
Yeah, the helicopter. Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to that one.
So let's gently, delicately go back and talk sort of about politics a bit. I saw the chat lose its mind talking about Brexit.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the announcement from the White House that they want to put boots on the ground on the moon by 2024?
Um, well, the thing, I've only been in science communication for a very short period of time.
Oh, we're not going to get your answer. Oh, your internet is it my internet? Is it your internet?
It might be mine.
Yeah,
It's our first warm weather of our very long summer, so it could be
yeah,
melting some cables. Who knows? Um, yeah, so I've been loosely following it. I mean, the good thing about coming out of the daily cycle of news is that I can now pick and choose about what topics I cover and what topics I write about. And space politics was never my strong suit, but I'm always a little bit pessimistic now, especially when NASA administrator goes up and says, "Okay," especially with the current administration, it's all about image. I don't think there's really any hope that the current plan that they're trying to push, and especially by what, the year 2023 or something,
2024.
2024,
Yeah,
that is a tiny time frame. So be coming up with, okay, we're going to do this. This isn't the Apollo era. They're not committing that much cash. If they were, I'd be semi excited. But then again, this time we do have like SpaceX. We have the
right.
commercial rockets that can do this. I don't see it happening because change of administrations always mixes things up. And I went through the whole Constellation program. I was really excited about
Yeah,
the Ares rocket. When I saw that cigar rocket launch, I was like, wow, this is a new era. I mean, there's a whole lot of politics behind it. There's a whole lot of rubbish behind it. There's a whole lot of overspending behind it. But just having seen that rocket launch, I actually saw that could have been a catalyst for like a really strong government-led program until I saw the price tag, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's no way the US is ever going to fund that. But now I'm seeing like commercial rockets launch. I mean, literally in my backyard, and of course in Florida as well with SpaceX. SpaceX, of course, launches from Vandenberg up the coast from me, and I've seen these rockets go up from my house in Los Angeles. So it's quite a sight. And SpaceX always has this knack of launching them just the right time when they look like aliens. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
I always
freaky. I
say
mean,
that, like, if people, like, that's what UFO sightings would look like if they were really happening, is a
yeah,
million people posting a picture on Instagram.
yeah. When I saw, I think it wasn't the Falcon Heavy. It was the Falcon 9 that launched. I think it was just a normal satellite. It was the start of last year. I remember I was driving on the freeway heading north through Ventura County, and I was in the car with my wife and my dad. He was staying over for Christmas. It was just, I think it was maybe in the New Year, and we were driving along the freeway, and my dad points up and he said, "What's that?" Obviously because something in space. He asked me, and I was like, "I haven't got a clue." And my checklist in my head went from the most absurd to the most rational. And it was funny how I was doing it in real time, but I was driving at the time. But suddenly, this light object just kind of mushroomed into this wonderful contrail. I thought it was like a high altitude aircraft at first, but I was like, no, it's too high. Is it a rocket? Is it like as in a missile, like nuclear war starting? I was thinking, no, that's absurdity. And stop thinking about that. And then I was thinking, okay, is there a rocket launch now? And I was thinking, oh, that could be a SpaceX launch. And holy crap, I didn't know it was going to look that good. And it just kind of turned into this wonderful show. I was taking pictures of my iPhone. It was that good. It was like I couldn't believe it, and everybody was pulling over on the freeway because everybody was so distracted. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's exciting to have this commercial energy behind getting stuff into space, and I think that is probably the future of making space more accessible is by driving down the cost, like what Elon Musk is doing. I mean, a lot of things I don't agree with what he's doing at the moment, but I do agree with his ultimate mission with SpaceX. Kind of lofty to say he's going to colonize Mars, which is kind of problematic in itself, saying colonizing anything. But ultimately, he's providing humanity with a mechanism to get into space. So that stuff excites me. Whether NASA will be able to use that to their advantage, and perhaps they'll be able to turbocharge their race to the moon using commercial rockets. I don't see it happening,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm frustrated by it. And whenever I see, politicians especially talk about this stuff, I have a heavy dose of negativity with it, and that's why I don't really write about it because it's going to be horribly biased when I do
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I definitely like to sort of be fairly delicate in dealing with it. I mean, part of it
Yeah,
is, again, having done this job for as long as I have and have seen just the whole process go in circles. We're
yeah,
going to the moon. Nope, we're not going to the moon. We're going to Mars. Nope, we're not going to Mars. We're going back to the
yeah,
moon. Nope, we're going to go to an asteroid. Nope, we're going back to uh, uh, now we're going back to the moon and then on to Mars, whatever it is, right? And that the goals change, and so you can see that with each administration, they just overturn the plans of the previous administration. When you look at the the hardware, when you look at the Space Launch System, it is an offshoot. It is essentially a repurposed version of the Constellation, which is a repurposed version of the Space Shuttle, which is designed to make sure that the expertise and all of the contractors and all of the contracts and all of the work that's being done for the Space Shuttle continues on. I don't
yeah,
think there's a lot of people at this point that would disagree with the statement that there's something wrong with the way this is working and
yeah,
what the solution is with the Space Launch System and all that. And then on the flip side, right? And then on the flip side, you look at what's happening with SpaceX and Blue Origin and even the Vulcan rocket coming from ULA and some of these smaller launch providers. Like, there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening at the same time.
yeah,
And so it does feel like a Gordian knot now, where no one can make any progress. The hardware is not able to adapt at the pace that the administrations are changing their goals,
yeah,
and that no one is going to go anywhere forever, right?
yeah,
And so there's got to be some other solution. And so I personally do not disagree with let's go back to the moon. Like, fine, pick a goal, whatever. It's not the goal that I would choose,
Yeah,
right?
stick to it.
But and stick to it, and then come up with a solution to be able to do it. As long as you fund it appropriately, and as long as you make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
And I think it's the funding it appropriately has not necessarily been acknowledged when you look at the kind of budget. Like, it cost a mountain of money to go to the moon back in the Apollo era, like 10 times as much as is being spent today, matched with the safety concerns. Like, there's just nothing is ready to go today to be safe. And so if it's going to be a race, if it's going to be a sprint, then safety is going to be the thing that's going to take a back seat. And that's nobody wants more astronauts to die in this process to happen. So
yeah, especially for like what could be a cancelled program. So it's like, we're going to race to the moon. What happens if there's one accident, or what happens if we didn't do proper checks? I mean, space is inherently dangerous, and you are going to have an elevated risk by doing these things. But you have to also make sure your explorers are as safe as humanly possible. So it doesn't make sense to say, okay, in the next 5 years, we're going to race to the moon. And I'm not opposed to the moon. I mean, it's the nearest thing, nearest.
Yeah, pick a thing. Fine, go to the moon.
Yeah. I mean, set up a base on the moon. That'd be fantastic. Like, have like the space station. I mean, that's a great example of, governments coming together in international collaboration. I think that's probably the key when it comes to our future in space. If government agencies are still going to spearhead it, it's going to be international collaboration, because we've proven it can work with the International Space Station. Sure, there's a lot of critics about the International Space Station, but we actually have permanent human presence in space. Yeah, it's literally just above our atmosphere, but it's close. We are getting there. We're developing the technologies that we can possibly then send humans to spend more time on the moon. And the moon is a very interesting place. We can do great science there, and it's our natural satellite is sitting there for us to send humans to live for long periods of time. We can do it. The technology is there. The funding isn't, and I would say we need another international collaboration with NASA, with all their international partners, to make that happen. I don't think the money's there for it. Yeah. And I think that sending humans back to the moon just to say we've done it again doesn't make a whole world of sense. Right. So if we're going to go back, we're going to go back to stay. But if you're going to say that, you need to actually make sure there's decades of funding available, or at least some semblance of a mechanism in place where they can generate funds to do that.
Yeah.
Because taxpayers just can't afford that kind of mission. It has to have some sort of commercial impetus as well. I mean, it's not going to be a Mars One thing, because that was just
That went out of business. That went bankrupt.
Yeah, that was painful to watch, and it went down in a burning mess. But so we can't have things like that. What we need is more SpaceXs. We need to solve short-term problems, but with an overarching goal. And so basically, Elon Musk, that was his whole thing when he was blowing up rockets in the South Pacific in 2008. That's only 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's like we've come a long way. Just this one company has come a long way, and they're profitable. Yeah, they are profitable. Yeah. Yes. So so obviously the model does work, and we're seeing more and more commercial entities coming around, and they're seeing that model as a way of making money in space. And what it comes down is their bottom line. It's like, if they can make money by launching stuff into space, if launching humans into space. I mean, look, we've got Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic. I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent about going on suborbital flights, but ultimately, I'd say more stuff. The more stuff we do in space, and all the different sectors, whether it's tourism, whether it's cheaper cargo launches, or whether it's getting people to the space station. All these things need to be done. And I think we need to build this infrastructure in space to actually make space affordable. Then we can make the next step, spending longer on the moon, then ultimately going to Mars. But I don't see it happening in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's definitely not going to happen in the next 4 or 5. That's just
you don't see feet on the moon in the next 5 years. No, I don't think I do either.
China might. I mean, I'm just looking at NASA. I mean, China just always surprises. So it's like when they have a mission, they just throw their money behind it and do it. But it's going to be like an Apollo moment.
Yeah, the benefits of a central controlled culture, right? Of government.
There is that. Yeah.
Saying we're all going to the moon now.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. Don't worry
Interesting.
about the downsides and the, political
Yeah.
ramifications. Yeah. It's a fascinating thing. And I feel, I mean, I don't have any concrete knowledge of this, but it feels to me like people are concerned enough that the Chinese are pretty serious about sending humans to the moon. I mean, they've got astronauts, they're testing out their technology for going to the moon. They're working on something that's going to be like that. It could very well be that that's sort of the time horizon that they're starting to look at is the next 5 to 10 years. And so the
Yeah.
goal is beat them to the moon, which is a terrible reason to do that, right?
Yeah,
It's the
I can even understand the space race, the Apollo era. I can get that because we hadn't been to the moon before. We literally broke barriers within a very, very short period of time. No matter the reasons behind it, it was basically a race between the US and Russia. Now it's not a race because that's kind of been done. So if you're just going to go there to beat China, well, you kind of beat them 50 years ago.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
know what?
You already
We've
won.
already
Yeah,
won now.
yeah.
We don't.
No matter how quickly, how well they get to the moon, you
Yeah,
can note that you already beat them.
yeah, I wish I was a politician because I'd say, okay, so it's time to race to Mars,
Yeah.
and then just see who wants to race with me. We'll just see. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
But
I posted on Twitter a couple of days ago. I'm like, what would be a good challenge would be I want to see someone perfect artificial gravity in space.
yeah,
That's the thing that I want to see. I want to see some kind of rotating thing in space because now you've got artificial gravity.
yeah,
Um, why go into another gravity well when you could just, if you made it out of Earth's gravity well, just stay in space. So,
yeah. We all want our 2001 Space Odyssey.
yeah, yeah, I want to
It's
see.
it's going
Exactly.
to happen.
Yeah,
It's definitely going to happen at some point. But again, I just like I want it to happen in my lifetime. I want to see it happen. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care too much about after I'm gone. I want to
yeah.
see it. you know?
Yeah, and I think if SpaceX does get the Starship rolling, one of the things the Starship will be able to do is launch off the Earth, fly to the moon, land on the moon, go for a little walk, come back onto your
Yeah.
spaceship, and fly back to Earth. Like it's just as one of its missions, just right out of the gate.
Yeah,
So
and all of that was predicted by science fiction. We always go back to science fiction,
yeah,
and it's like, well, let's get our inspiration from science fiction. What would our Babylon 5 friends do? I mean, what kind of technologies do they have? I mean, it's one thing saying there's Star Trek and want warp speed and stuff. That's not going to happen. Certainly not within our foreseeable future. But there's certain components that could happen. I mean, just look at The Martian, and there was some very decent uses of technology there that is well within our grasp. Most of it is just funding and political will. And I get annoyed by that because if I was a politician, I'd make it happen. I'd get the funding to do it because that's how enthusiastic I am about it. But
yeah.
unfortunately, the world isn't us. The world is a very vast and diverse and interesting place. That we're not all space enthusiasts, which actually I want to change one mind at a time.
Evolution Inc. is asking, are you the guy who invented the O'Neill cylinder?
No, no, I wish I was. He's not even a family member, sadly.
No, Gerard O'Neill is not a family member.
No, he's not. He's not a great uncle or anything. No, it sucks.
have you
I,
have you
I
really have you
wish.
dug into this? Have you looked?
yeah, yeah, no, no, he's nothing to do with me.
And Avi Scott and Flowers is saying that we should start a race to the Sagittarius A black hole. Can you confirm or deny if that's a good idea?
Well, no, it's a bad idea.
Okay, all right.
it would take too long.
I was just looking some kind of inside knowledge about what's going to happen on April 10th, and that's the
yeah,
way.
yeah. The ESO actually built a rocket to take us to the black hole.
There you go.
Now that's
Scoop.
another thing. I mean, it's like, what would that thing look like?
Yeah.
Up close. I mean, we've kind of again science fiction.
Yeah.
Interstellar. We kind of have an idea about what it's going to look like. And so when the first images do come in from the Event Horizon Telescope, it's going to hopefully confirm or deny some of these assumptions that we've made. So again, we are living in the future. We don't need flying cars.
A couple people have wondered: have you ever met Matt O'Dowd from PBS Spacetime?
Yes, I have. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. A planetary society. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are like virtual twins, right?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. PBS, you should watch it again. Yeah, I mean, he's got an Australian accent. Well, you've got an English accent, but apart from
They're
that,
pretty much the same.
yeah,
I mean, come on, let's face it.
exactly. And I've got my Canadian accent, so really, we're all the same.
Oh, yeah.
We're out of time, Ian. It was a pleasure to hang out with you and catch up. And people got to watch us hang out, which is always fun. So what's the thing that you're working on right now and people can find out more?
Yeah, so I mean, always check in on astroengine.com. That's astroengine, one word.com. I usually post things on there fairly regularly. I recently posted about Brian the Bat. Do you remember
Yes,
Brian
I
the Bat?
remember. Yeah, you broke the story.
10 years.
10 years.
10 whole years. And it was random. I just checked the date and I was like, whoa, it's been 10 years. So I wrote a whole thing about that. So you can catch up with Brian and why we were so geeky 10 years ago. So yeah, astroengine.com. Always check out my Twitter. I'm very chatty on Twitter. Check out astroengine at astroengine. And yeah, and then the big thing that's happening really for me right now, I'm writing stuff for the University of Waterloo for April 10th.
For April 10th, whatever's going to happen.
Wake up early, Fraser.
The human mission to the supermassive black hole.
The human mission. Yeah, we're sending Matthew McConaughey to the black hole. That is the big announcement.
Right.
I'm very excited.
That's some big news. I'm really glad we can report it here. Well, Ian, thank you so much. Pleasure hanging out with you. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to everybody. Thank you. And we'll see you all next week. New episode dropping soon. Stay tuned. All about the future of planet hunting. All right. Thanks everyone.